Greetings, Moralis community. Phil here, your head of research at Moralis, and we've got a special stream lined up for today. Today, we are meeting with Dominic from Lisk. Dominic, how are you doing today? Welcome to the stage.
Hey, Phil, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Doing very well.
Well, it's great to have you, and I'm excited to get into all the content that we have prepared regarding Lisk and just talking about that as we're in this super bull market phase, and we already see some of that energy flowing into important altcoins. So it's just a perfect time for us to be talking about this. Now, for those of you who are at this stream every single week, just know that this one's going to be a little different than normal. We're not going to do our Fast Five today. We're going to move the Fast Five to Wednesday this week. And a special happy Thanksgiving to any of our American audience here today, as it is Thanksgiving week. Now, on top of that, guys, we do have some exciting stuff we're going to talk about like normal. But before we get to our headline type things and talking about tokens and stuff like that, our main focus today is about Lisk. And Lisk is a great protocol for us to be talking about right now because it's what you might call an OG protocol. It's one that's around from previous cycles, but they've been doing exactly what I've been telling you guys to look for. And that is, if you're looking at legacy protocols that have been around for a while, you want to see them reinventing themselves and staying relevant through the things that they do right now. And I think Lisk is really going to be a perfect example of that for us to explore today. So that said, Dominic, I want to give you the floor here a little bit to give us an introduction. For those of us who are here today who've never heard of Lisk before, maybe you've heard of it, you don't know a lot about it, give us your elevator pitch introduction, and we'll go from there.
Great. So thanks again for having me. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in North America, the United States. I grew up there too, and it's a special time of the year. So if you haven't heard of Lisk, let's do an intro on what Lisk is now. Lisk right now is a layer 2 part of the Optimism Superchain alongside Base, WorldChain, Sonium from Sony, Unichain from Uniswap, and a bunch of others. Inc. from Kraken just launched last week. The really powerful thing that we're doing there as a collective is we're building kind of the industry's first native interoperability set. And so that's very exciting. I think, again, people in the industry aren't talking about that enough yet because it hasn't gone live, but it's coming live. But there's an intention behind all these projects to build in a manner that allows for kind of the most seamless interoperability that the industry's seen so far. And from our, we've been in the space for a long time, and I'll go more into the history of Lisk in a minute. But we've seen that, like Chainalysis shows, but there's a majority of real world adoption around cryptos happening in kind of high growth markets around the world, whether that's in Africa, Southeast Asia, LATAM, and other places like that. And we've had enough, some of our best builders in our ecosystem have come from those regions over the years. And as we launched the L2, we decided, we could just double down and really focus exclusively on those regions, because we do see that we think that, a lot of the kind of, as the market matures and we really reach scalability here and we really reach global adoptions, we think these regions and the builders coming from these regions will lead that effort overall. So happy to go into the history there, but that's a real quick picture of what we're doing. We're part of the super chain. We're really focused on high growth markets and the builders in those locations.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. So for those of you who are with me every single stream or catching the replays, you remember very recently we talked about OP and Optimism Foundation and what they're doing for the space in terms of the tech that they're bringing to the table. So it's great to see projects like Lisk capitalizing on those new advancements in a great way. And so this is a perfect example of what I was talking about previously. Now, I want to take just a really quick second here for anybody who's viewing this stream and not already a Moralis Pro member. If you're seeing this stream for the first time and you don't already have Moralis Pro, there is a link below for you to click and join our community. Now, I have one other special deal for anybody who's watching right now. If you don't currently have Moralis Pro, send an email to support@moralis.com and we can set you up with a free trial so you can see firsthand what these streams are normally like. So that said, back to our special stream here today. Now, I want to hear a little bit more about Lisk history because That's exciting to me when protocols are successful in reinventing themselves. You know, a term I used earlier, and I think you guys definitely fall into that category because, you know, initially Lisk was Lisk a proof of work chain initially?
Proof of stake. I mean, we were layer one.
Proof of stake. Okay. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that and how we ended up, you know, using the latest and greatest OP stack technology with the L2 version.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, let's just frame the conversation a little bit, right? I mean, I think with, you know, the fun and speculative aspect of the industry, sometimes we get ahead of ourselves in terms of where the adoption's at, right? And because we get so much attention around the bull markets from regulators, from financial investment talk shows, things like that. And, you know, again, I think, you know, CoinDesk or Cointelegraph put out a picture a few weeks ago showing where we are in terms of the adoption cycle versus kind of the internet. And, you know, again, they put us kind of in the 1997 area. I don't know if it's that or if it's 2000 or early 2000, but somewhere we're still very early in terms of the adoption trend in Web3. And I think that's important to remember just because I think so much of the story of Web3 is still to be written. And, you know, even kind of early successes or, you know, even larger projects you kind of see have a good run and then kind of fade out for a while. And so we're still a ways away from kind of having decided winners in the space and what the space will look like in a few years. So Lisk was founded in 2016, one of the original ICOs. We were kind of one of the first 5 ICOs following Ethereum. And the idea was, you know, the company was founded on a number of principles. And 2 of the main ones were, how can we democratize access to this space? How can we get, you know, the Web3 technology in as many builders' hands, as many users' hands as possible? And how can we scale blockchain, right? And so the team always took a very long-term vision here in terms of like, this is going to be a 10, 15, 20-year journey till we reach mass adoption. So let's just stay relevant. So the initial idea at that time, you know, very early, Ethereum had just launched. There was no clarity whether kind of smart contracts pioneered by Ethereum would really be what the market kind of accepted as the dominant, you know, way of building on Web3 technology, on blockchain technology. And so, you know, the idea at the time was kind of to do something similar to Ethereum, do a layer 1 protocol built from scratch and have it based for JavaScript and TypeScript users, for developers, right? And so that was the initial idea, like, let's just get this into the hand of as many developers as possible. And you know, in the same time, we were working on kind of how do we scale blockchain, and one of the ideas that we kind of helped pioneer was this, you know, app-specific sidechain model, which you also see with like Polkadot and Cosmos, right? So we were very early in innovating in that space. And as the space has matured, and as we came, you know, kind of a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit more, we started to think like, okay, if we're true to our mission, if we're true to our vision of like, how do we get as many people into blockchain as possible, both developers and users, and how do we help scale this technology so that it can reach mass adoption? We just started to see that we thought that layer 1s and that kind of architecture were probably not the best ways to contribute to that any longer, right? So even if you look at Cosmos and Polkadot, which have become relatively big in their own right, and, you know, again, very interesting what they've built there, but that model in terms of really scaling, we question, right? And we built something very similar. And just to point to one example, you know, if you have apps that all have their own chain, they need to create security for those chains, right? And so Polkadot and Cosmos have both, and we had looked at this as well, have created kind of this shared security model where they can kind of, you know, you can kind of tap into the underlying security of the chain. But even that model doesn't really scale beyond like maybe max 50 projects or 50 chains. So it's very limited in terms of real, you know, adoptability for apps, for many, you know, thousands of apps. And you can kind of see that playing out now, right? Like if you look at what's happening in those ecosystems versus what's happening in Ethereum and L2s and some other market, you know, some other layer 1s, you don't see it really as prominent as it was even 1 or 2 years ago. So that was kind of one thing, right? So we saw that, and we just thought with the Superchain, like, you know, again, we just thought that this was just a better way of coming together to work with some of the top teams in the industry collaboratively, which is kind of a throwback to kind of original Web3 ethos of like, why are we all competing against each other for this limited amount of users and developers and applications we have when we should be pushing the space forward? And if we can get to where we want to get as an industry, there'll be plenty of apps and users to go around. So, kind of that was like very high level what we thought about. And there were other things as well. Like, I think if you look at profitability of layer ones, it's actually surprising how few of them are profitable. Solana actually, pretty interestingly, kind of in Q1 of this year, I think they spent close to $900 million just in covering fees. So there's a lot of hype in the space. There's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of things that look really cool. If you look under the hood a little bit, you'll start to see that maybe some of that's not as shiny as it seems. And again, we kind of saw that about 2 years ago and said, look, let's just stay true to our mission. Let's make a hard decision here to kind of pivot the community to a different tech stack and a new beginning in some ways, but still go after what we were always intending to do, and that's what we've done.
That's great. And since we're talking about the Ethereum tech stack in general and L2s connected to that, those of you who've been watching our streams know that there's something that we have been talking about a lot the past week or so, actually the past couple of weeks, and that is that Ethereum is undervalued in Bitcoin terms. That is that for a while it's felt like it costs more Ethereum to buy one Bitcoin than it has in quite some time. And that's something that we expected was going to correct itself. And I wanted to point out that's something we could see happening in real time right now. We're up about 6%, a little more than 6% on the week compared to Bitcoin, and 4.8% better on the daily than Bitcoin based on the current statistics. This is exactly what we predicted, exactly what we expected to see within our communities. And I think it reflects an underlying truth that the Ethereum L2 space itself is undervalued. And that as we see Bitcoin dominance fall, which is currently above 55%, way above. I mean, we saw it as high as 60% this past week. Right now it's at 57.3. We know that value in terms of the global market cap is going to flow into valuable Ethereum L2 projects as well as other projects. And I think that this is a good example of that. So let's talk a little bit more specifically, Dominic, about what you guys are doing right now. Because obviously there's a lot of Ethereum L2s out there. And there's even a lot of them that are powered by OP Stack. So what makes you guys special? And let's get into that.
Yeah. And I think I could also talk all day about kind of why Ethereum is still very unique and undervalued. I mean, not necessarily just as an asset, but just as a community. And we could definitely dive into that as well. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think,
Dominic, at any point, if you got something to share along the lines of what I'm talking about, we definitely have time for that. So let me know.
That for a second. I mean, I think, again, I think Ethereum, there's so much FUD always around Ethereum, like, oh, it's too slow. Oh, it's old. Oh, like there's just always so much talk. Especially when you're new in the space and you see like the new cool coin or chain and like, it's all where the hype is. And like the fact that Ethereum is still like so dominant after all these years is really like, it's almost a miracle, and it should be appreciated because like people have been talking like this since it was launched, right? That's why there were so many other L1 competitors. And just in terms of dominance, obviously I know like Solana is doing great in terms of, users and transaction volume at the moment. But if you look at like DeFi TVL, you guys are into DeFi. If you look at DeFi TVL, over 60% is still on Ethereum. And so that's massive, right? Like that is, that is in 2024, almost in 2025, you still have the majority of TVL on Ethereum. And, again, with L2s now coming, like, yeah, I think people just get kind of lost in the noise, but like the L2s will be the consumer layer of Ethereum, right? It's kind of the end goal in some ways of what Ethereum was meant to be, as like Ethereum as a settlement layer and kind of scalability on top. And you can just see, like, don't try to take my word for it. Like, take the fact that Coinbase decided not to launch their own L1, they decided to build an L2, and with this, OP stack and the part of the Superchain. Same thing with Ink and Kraken, same thing with Uniswap, same thing with the Sony team, right? Same thing with the WorldCoin team. Like, these are not like nobody teams or like new people in the space or beginners just launching chains and it's easier to launch a chain or whatever. Like, these are very talented teams. Lisk has been around for a long time. We've been through a lot. We've seen a lot. we're making a clear decision of where we want to build. And I think, if you take one message away from the meeting, from this show around, just from, Ethereums and L2s, is just look at the quality of teams that are choosing to build on top of Ethereum as L2s, and specifically part of the Superchain, which we'll get into. I just think it's still kind of slept on. It's very undervalued. And I know it's not like the new cool thing necessarily, but there's a ton of value being built there. And I think, there's a potential for kind of the L2 layer, this horizontally scalable layer on top of Ethereum, to really blow some people away in the coming, 2 to maybe even 1 year, 2 years, in terms of the adoption that you see there. And you see like Base is a good example of this. Just look at the traction that they're getting. It's kind of taking off parabolically, and we expect that just to continue and more talented teams to join.
Absolutely. In fact, based on some of the experiments we've been performing inside the Moralis Pro group, we know that Base is an excellent ecosystem for investing in Bitcoin, Ethereum strategies via liquidity provisioning. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, that's the exact type of thing that we teach in our Bull Run course, available to our Moralis Pro members. All right. So Dominic, back to the question I'd asked regarding how you guys, I guess, set yourselves apart from the pack, because this is a group here. We enjoy using a lot of different L2s. So what should we get excited about when checking out Lisk? And we may just follow up what you tell us here with an addition to our lessons within our DeFi courses, actually. So
100%. I think if you look at a world where there's going to be, hundreds or thousands of layer 2s, each layer 2 is going to have some sort of specification, right? I mean, there might be something like Base that kind of, is able to scale beyond just a specific niche, but in general, like the idea here is that there's going to be much more targeted chains. And so like, that's where we think that so that's why one of the reasons we're positioning ourselves for these high growth regions, again, is just that like, we think that that's kind of also, as is the Superchain, as our L2s on Ethereum, we think that's kind of a narrative that's being slept on, and just a reality that, again, more users in these markets use Web3 technology than in any other parts of the world, right? And so maybe they don't currently have the highest TVL ratios, other little aspects in certain metrics, but the users use Web3, they're familiar with Web3, they're comfortable with Web3, and they see it as like the future of finance, of economic systems, not just as a speculative thing. So imagine what happens when those users start to really tap into additional apps being built in Web3, right? I think it's kind of, we totally believe that that's going to be kind of the nexus of where real adoption comes from, right? And there's a lot of great DeFi stuff happening globally, but I think, again, it's still a relatively small user base. It's still mostly investment focused, and that's cool that you guys are doing that here. I don't want to take away from that. But we just think that like, to really reach adoption, to really, like, just a quick example, right? If you use something like Venmo in the United States, Venmo has something like 70 million monthly active users. Stable coins, the bigger chains still have like, maybe it's 750K monthly active users. So imagine that's like 100x, right? So imagine that transition, and that's just in America, right? So imagine a global ecosystem using stable coins as a primary form of payment. That's just one example, right? But there's just like, think about the potential there. So yeah, we just think that's a kind of an underserved market, because it's not quite as, maybe it's not as speculative. Maybe it's more like where the real adoption comes from. And so like, in these markets, there's many things that you need to do to separate yourself, whether that's kind of from building relationships, from supporting certain types of integrations that work on and off ramps in these regions, whether it's building out specific product to further support such builders. You have to, each market is very unique, and you have to spend the time, right? And I think what global chains haven't really done is been able to focus the time and effort and resources needed to really gain a lot of adoption there. I mean, you kind of saw it happen with Tron and Binance Smart Chain a bit, but again, like, we don't think those are really long-term. Like, why build there if you can build on top of Ethereum in interconnected ecosystem with Base and others, right? Like it's a much more.
That's a really good point, because we see Tron being a great example, because actually Tron would be maybe the only real exception to that rule, where you've got millions of active users per month. And with Tron is one that I've explored a bit in the past as well, which the members of our community know. But that said, it's so much outside of everything else that's going on. The bridge routes tend to be more expensive, and there isn't a lot of shared liquidity or commonality between using the Tron ecosystem and using Ethereum. Whereas if we're using something like Arbitrum or Optimism, there's a lot of unity, a lot of fluidity between the different L2s available there, moving between them, usually only a few pennies in transaction fees, even to satisfy both networks. And I assume that we'd have many of the same benefits with Lisk when we start using it. Now, you were talking about that stablecoin use case. I definitely believe in that. I think we saw an example of the power of that even with Terra Luna, and of course the mechanisms behind it were not sufficient to overcome the obstacles that they encountered. You know, that's a different conversation, but the point being that we've seen the excitement around on-chain, even algorithmic stablecoins, and then furthermore, the importance of having that as a daily payment system, you know, which could easily replace something like Venmo, Cash App. I like to talk about Cash App more because they at least have a Bitcoin on-ramp.
Sure.
But nevertheless, that is still a far cry from what we want. I mean, if you had a good stablecoin daily point of sale chain, then it would be easy to later on integrate things like Bitcoin purchases right into that, I assume. Now, tell us a little bit, maybe you want to share your screen and show us, you know, what do you guys have live right now related to stablecoin utility, or is that something we're still waiting on? Where are we with respect to that, that plan there?
Let me, I'll just talk for a second, then I'll share my screen in a minute.
Sure thing.
But yeah, I mean, we have like, you know, we have USDC and Tether already live. I mean, a big thing in these markets is like the local stable coins, right? And I think, you know, I mean, stable coins are as one thing, I think they're just a gateway, right? So, you know, you start with stable coins. It's kind of a thing that people want to use in many markets in the world. And that's kind of their first entry door to Web3. But I think what that allows is then for, you know, you can build on top of that, right? Whether it's with yield-bearing stablecoins, which is a big thing that is coming up right now that we're focused on as well. Things like with Angle Protocol and Mountain Protocol. But then also like, again, once you have a wallet, once you're comfortable using Web3, then, you know, there's just so much potential to tap into other apps. Like, you know, again, we have a great team out of Ghana that's building, you know, kind of a decentralized prediction market. I mean, think of Polymarket, but it's kind of, it's more gamified. It's more, you can kind of create your own markets there as well. And they're seeing tons of traction, right? And so it's like, I think you just, yeah, it's going to kind of, and with the L2s, we're starting to be at a place where apps can start to build and reach scale and feel much more native, you know, natural and more like intuitive, like Web2 apps do, right? And you can kind of see, if you look at the transition from Steemit to Farcaster now, in terms of like social apps, like the difference is immense, right? And I'm not even sure we're 100% there yet. I still think we're probably another iteration cycle away from kind of having things feel very native and kind of intuitive from a user perspective, but we're getting very close. And I think you're going to start to see things start to be unlocked and real applications that scale coming to the market very soon. So, I mean, just to get back, because I hadn't quite finished on in terms of why we're different, right? So like you kind of touched on it with the example of Tron, actually, because you're talking about, you can build on Tron and maybe there's some use cases there and they had some good distribution in high growth regions, but at the same time, they're like, you're kind of in a siloed ecosystem, right? And that has been the reality of kind of the infrastructure layer, whether it's an L1 or L2, is that, you know, you kind of either need to go niche and then users and builders have to make a trade-off. Like maybe there's some benefits here because it's kind of up my alley of what I'm trying to build. But then again, I'm not in this global liquidity pool. It's hard to bridge, et cetera, et cetera. Or you have these global chains, which again, just don't have the bandwidth to focus on specific niches as much, right? And so the interoperability set, let me just talk about that for a second. So with the Superchain, the OP stack means a few different things, right? The OP stack is the technology. And if you want to build on the OP stack, you can kind of take various routes. You can just, fork the OP stack basically and kind of customize it. Like chains like Blast have done that. And you're just using the OP stack as an underlying layer, but you're customizing it as much as you want and you're building it as such. Then there's the kind of the path of being part of this collective of the Superchain. And that's, making a conscious decision to provide a portion of the sequencer revenue back to the Optimism Foundation for providing the tech. But in exchange, you get to be part of this collective. You get access, all the builders and users in your ecosystem get access to all the retro funding that OP does, which is like 800 million OP tokens, right? So that's blanketed across the Superchain. And there's a lot of other benefits. There's a lot of network benefits, obviously, that come from that, from working together. But then even within the Superchain, then there's various aspects, right? Like the real idea of the Superchain is this interoperable network on top of Ethereum. And to be inclusive, basically anybody can join the Superchain, but then there's kind of a group of chains, a limited group of chains that are going to be part of this initial interoperability set, right? And so Lisk is part of that. And if you see the pictures that are going out from Optimism, let me actually, if I can share my screen briefly. I can show a little bit more there, but there's been an image that they've been sharing recently.
So as I understand it, we got a question here in the chat about the Superchain in general. And just to start to answer that, as I understand it, the Superchain is a shared security layer. Am I correct? Where the consensus is actually performed by the foundation and then shared by all the members of the Superchain?
Not exactly. I mean, it's more kind of, it's kind of, so, I mean, the technical way that this works is that you run nodes of the various chains that'll be part of the interop set. And so but we're also making a trade-off, like we all have a very similar setup, like a very similar OP stack setup, right? So similar block times, similar DA layers, right? So we take out the complexity that comes when you're trying to build interoperability or connect chains, right? Like block times is a very easy one, right? If we run 1 second block times and somebody else runs 10-second block times, that becomes very hard to be able to like make something feel native on a single chain, right? And so we're making a decision to work together here and make some slight trade-offs at the beginning, but also work together to kind of improve the tech as a group. But so this is like, so again, if you're building on Lisk, you will soon be building on the Superchain. And I think, again, that's what people don't realize yet, is that that's going to be an unlock in terms of how you can build an application, in terms of how a chain can be built and what they can focus on, right? Like, because if you can have, if you guys are interested in DeFi, if you can build an app on Lisk, and then you just want to have, an OP pool, OP USDC pool, and, you have a function where you need to route something through that, you can just tap into that pool on Velodrome, on OP mainnet, for example, and it'll settle back on Lisk and your app in the same block, right? So it'll feel extremely native. We haven't seen that yet. And from a user perspective, I have a wallet on Lisk. I want to use an app on Base. I don't have to bridge. I don't even have to switch the network. It just automatically works, right? And so these are things that, like, I think, the power law of that, the network benefits of that, and what it unlocks in terms of what you can do as an app developer, I think, again, people aren't really ready for it. And I think it goes over most people's heads because we've been talking about interoperability for so long, that they kind of just think, oh yeah, this is some more talk about interoperability or Superchain. Somebody recently told me, oh, there's so many Superchains. Like, so, I think it's just terminology in a bit, but this is coming. And, again, it allows for Lisk, to be focused and to have the best of both worlds. We can focus on specific markets where we see the highest potential from a builder and user standpoint. And then those users can build on Lisk, but they're not siloed, as you were saying with Tron, right? They will have access to this massive global network and, only going to be growing over time. So in our opinions, kind of why wouldn't you want to build that? And that's all secured by Ethereum. It's the most, secure, decentralized settlement layer, if you will, in Web3. It's been running for 7, 8 years now, right? No downtime. So like we think what this unlocks is massive, and people aren't quite aware of it yet.
Well, and isn't that always the case, right? Whenever we have an idea of what something's supposed to look like in the future in our industry, oftentimes that idea is a bit different than what it looks like when we start using it. And
100%.
that trade-off happens so subtly, but then so quickly in the end that people usually forgot about the initial thing. The example I always use is well, I've actually got two now, but the first example I always use is when it comes to sharding. We used to talk about Ethereum sharding. Well, sharding is a term from centralized database world. And if you understand that term in terms of centralized databases, then you can see how the current L2 reality that we live in is functionally a iteration on blockchain sharding, because we didn't really have a concept of what blockchain sharding would be. We had an idea of what it could be, and in reality it ended up being a collection of L2s. And then you could even see this as a further iteration of that. Now we're going into a world where these sharded blockchains have a shared communication layer that allows for things which we have never seen before. And that's the new idea. The other example that I give now is account abstraction. About a year or so ago, everybody was going nuts about this idea of account abstraction. Well, we have it now. But what does it look like? Well, it depends on the dApp you're using. Depends on the instance of account abstraction. Account abstraction is everything from the safe wallet provided by Gnosis to BullX, which is a different trading platform that uses account abstraction to make possible things like stop loss and stuff like that on chain, which otherwise would be impossible. These are the types of things we go over in our Moralis Pro community. A reminder about that link below. Check that out if you are not already a member. Now, that said, back to the topic at hand, this is getting understandable, I think, for our community, because while the mechanisms under the surface are different, this feels at least a little bit like the efficiency gains we've seen in the Cosmos ecosystem, but now for Ethereum chains, for EVM chains, rather than for Cosmos IBC. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, again, like since we built similar technology, and maybe Cosmos or Polkadot, maybe they find a solution to get more security to the other chains, but we just think this is a much more scalable model overall. And I think, the market again seems to be reflecting that as well. But yeah, exactly. That kind of, I would even say even stronger than that, because this is going to, I think it allows for the first time for, as an app developer, and actually I can show it here. There's actually, OP has already put out this Super Sim console, which is kind of a sandbox for being able to start playing with how you could build a kind of interop native app from the ground up. So that's really cool. You could check that out if you guys are developers out there. But yeah, I think, to the point we were talking about earlier, right? In terms of like being early, in terms of kind of needing to iterate here, and you were talking about Plasma now. So, actually, the core OP team, the core team at Optimism, they were the Plasma team at Ethereum, part of the Ethereum Foundation for a long time, or working with the Ethereum Foundation, right? So they also have been working at this problem for many years and have now kind of found something that's actually working. But yeah, it's cool to see.
100%. So I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, if you were asking about apps, but I can go to that a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah, let's talk about apps. One of the things that I want to briefly address here, we don't need to go through all the nuts and bolts of it, but is self-custody of assets in Lisk. And I think specifically Lisk assets, people are interested in knowing about that. I know it's possible to hold in your EVM wallet like MetaMask and things like that, but anything you wanted to clarify on that, we definitely have time for. And of course, I'll go deeper on how to use some of these DeFi functions in our Moralis Pro bull run course. So keep that in mind as well. We don't have to show everything, but anything you want to show on that, we definitely have time for. Let's get into the dApps. Let's take a look, guys. Now, this is the official dApp portal. I got it up open on my screen as well. I think a lot of you guys are used to me showing things through DeFi Llama. Now, the difference for anybody who's seeing curated Dapp portal like this is you guys do some communication with the teams. Do you do any like quality control with your own Dapp list here, or is this more or less a public bulletin board? I've seen both types, so I just want to make sure I know what we're looking
right
at.
now it's more, I mean, just to give a perspective of where we are, we just launched our user mainnet actually at DevCon last week. So we're like just launching the L2, and you can already see there's quite a bit of Dapps on here. So right now this is curated by us. We do plan to open it up to others to join. You can see Velodrome's on there. But these were just kind of, a lot of our launch partners going to market. And you can see, again, this is just DeFi right out the bat, whether it's Velodrome, whether it's Ionic lending protocol, which is kind of the largest lending protocol on Mode at the moment. Beefy's joining us. Angle, we talked about yield-bearing stablecoins before. Some more local-based, Nuzo's doing some really interesting things. It's a payment app in Africa. So there's a number of apps here, and you can see, I mean, that was just DeFi. You can go look at all of them. You can look by category here. This is on the Lisk website. You can also go check out the Lisk portal, where you can actually then kind of see the airdrop that's going on and kind of what apps you can engage with there as well.
Now, who's eligible for the airdrop over at portal.lisk.com?
Yeah, I mean, so right now, I mean, we just launched the user airdrop. So we just launched. I can jump over there if you'd like. Here we go. So this is here. You can, again, there's an ecosystem page as mentioned before. You can go through the apps here as well. And then we just launched the airdrop 2 days ago. I have not started participating, but yeah, this is mostly for users at the moment. So this is kind of, sign up, follow us, start using some of the apps. And this will be running kind of over the next few months. And this is just season 1. And one of the cool things we're going to be doing is this is a point-based system like others have done, but we'll also be adding in kind of what we're calling super tasks, which will be like 2-week sprints with unique tasks specifically around some of the apps that are deploying on Lisk. And there'll be direct payouts after those super tasks. So it's kind of a cool way to kind of, you can go for points in the long run, and you can also get like rewarded on the shorter term for participating in these super tasks that'll be coming up. Just really quickly to answer your question around wallets, right? So, I mean, obviously as a ERC20 token, LSK can now be kind of held within any ERC20 compatible wallet. Of course, that includes MetaMask, Coinbase Wallet, Rainbow Wallet, and Zarian Wallet are also integrating Lisk natively. So if Rainbow Wallet, we love. We actually have a team internally that's also about to launch their own wallet in the coming months, but they're called PassApp. So come check them out. They're doing a lot of things around account abstraction, having an AI dashboard to help kind of solve the discoverability aspect of Web3 on the homepage, which is really cool. So we'll have them integrated as well coming up soon. But yeah, I mean, from a token standpoint, obviously we think, having an L1 token is a very isolated existence in many ways, right? You're kind of you're siloed to the apps and the liquidity on your own ecosystem, whereas now the LSK token can be integrated with any kind of Ethereum DeFi, L2 DeFi application, and again, yeah, we're super excited about that for LSK holders. Stop sharing.
Awesome. I see there's some questions in the chat here about specifically the airdrop. Guys, for our Moralis Pro community, I am going to go through these steps during a lesson. So what I recommend for you in the meantime is check out that first introductory lesson we have there. That should get you all set up with using Lisk, and then we'll go through some of those steps together because I know we only have about 18 minutes left in the stream. I want to make sure we have maximum time to cover any other questions, but that is a great question. We're definitely going to cover that in our community. If you're not already a member, link below or message support@moralis.com for a trial opportunity. Reach out to support and they can help you with a trial if you're interested. All right. So the other question I had is just like a bit of a housekeeping question, but I know it's something that we are often concerned about as active DeFi users. If I buy this token on a central exchange and I want to move it into my private wallet, do all of the major exchanges support the new network at this time? Or are there any that you are working maybe closer with that support the new network and others are still using the other one where I'd have to use a bridge? Can you give any insight in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, so we're listed on close to 30 exchanges, Binance, Kraken. I mean, the only big one that we're not really is probably Coinbase at the moment, but we're working on that. But yeah, Binance, Kraken, Bybit, Huobi, HDX now, kind of most of the big ones globally. And so there is a difference. This is a great question because there are users, it does come up as an issue. So if you go, I can pull it up here again if you'd like. I can show you, but there is a page on our documentation. One second. Let me pull up the screen for you.
Yeah. Take your time. No worries. This is important because I know that, I mean, obviously in our pro community, we've got folks at all levels. So if you're thinking about checking out our community, come as you are. We're going to get you up to speed on whatever it is you want or need to know. But that said, we also want to cover for the new users. This is one of the things to be worried about when you're just in general, when you're looking at a coin that's been around for a while, maybe available on more than one network because of the evolution of the project. You want to make sure that the central exchange you're securing that token on supports the new network. So that's what we're talking about right now.
Yep, cool. And so as you see here, like if you go to our docs, there's a kind of section up here for like building on Lisk or using Lisk. If you go to using Lisk, there's a nice exchanges supporting list, and you get a full list of all the exchanges. You can see so far we have crypto.com, OKX, Upbit, xt.com, and HTX is coming in terms of all supporting Lisk, the layer 2 natively. Right now, Binance and the others are still just supporting withdrawals and deposits from Ethereum, but we're working on getting them onto the L2 as well. But for a user, it's relatively seamless still because, I mean, you just have to withdraw to your EOA wallet, your MetaMask or your Coinbase wallet on Ethereum, and you can bridge over in seconds at, again, fraction of a cost. Average costs on Lisk right now are sub 1 cent. So it's very smooth and easy. But we're continuing to work with exchanges to get more integrated in the L2 as we just launched the network now.
Great to know. So for any of you folks who are interested in seeing what trading of LSK is all about on these exchanges, you might consider using the one with the green circle there, just because you'll know then that they do support the new network. But do whatever you will with that info. It's completely up to you what you guys decide there.
Just to clarify there, they obviously all still support the token, right? So that's just a whether you can withdraw directly to the Lisk L2 network or you have to go to Ethereum, right? But as an investor in the LSK token, that shouldn't be much of concern to you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we already took a look in our bull run course where we looked at Lisk on how to bridge those assets over. So anybody who has gone through that video, you're already familiar with how to go through that process. And I'm happy to answer questions about that in our Moralis Pro community, as well as am I about any DeFi questions that you guys may have. Now, before we started this stream and before we get into this, I just want to check, Dominic, is there anything else you wanted to share with us about Lisk today? And then I wanted to get into that topic that you and I were talking about before the stream, just to give us a little extra discussion for the day. And of course, guys, this is a great time in the chat. If you've got questions about Lisk or anything we've talked about today, let us know in the chat. We'll put your question up on the screen and answer it, of course. But before we get into that, Dominic, anything else you wanted to share?
I mean, just because we were on the topic of the LSK token, again, I think, if you look at us versus other tokens, again, not financial advice here, but, we've been around for a long time in the space. Like the project is trusted. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to rug anybody. And if you believe in the L2 world and that being kind of the consumer layer on top of Ethereum, worth checking out, in our opinion. But yeah, that's about it from me in terms of, topics.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm looking at the questions here. Anything regarding the airdrop, I'm going to go ahead and follow up with in our lesson. Or PG, feel free to reach out to me in the pro group. I know I see you around there pretty regularly. And that goes for anybody else. If I missed your question, I apologize. But I want to get into this topic here today. It's extremely interesting, guys. It's not directly associated with Lisk, or maybe it is. I'm going to turn it over to Dominic in a minute to tell me what he knows about that. But have you guys heard about the De-SCi narrative? I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to show you guys a few different things relating to this. And I will share all of these links in our Moralis Pro announcements channel following the stream. So don't feel like you need to write down these links right now. I'm going to have those links for you. I got you guys. I got you. Okay. So let's get into the topic. De-SCi, or decentralized science, is a new narrative that we're just now learning about. In fact, some people are saying this is DeFi back in 2019. So what was DeFi like back in 2019? Well, think about no Uniswap, right? Compound maybe exists, but rewards are all over the charts. Nobody knows what the Ethereum gas fee is going to be. It's crazy, right? It's really early. You can't do a whole lot, and you end up spending a lot of money to do anything. And later on that year or into the next year and the following year exploded in value, right? Is this poised to do the same thing? Well, I don't know yet, guys. I'm going to have to do some research on this, and I'm going to share the links with you as I do. But I know that we have this post right here talking about it being the yet to emerge thing that is already starting off. We get an article from Cointelegraph kind of giving us some more information on it, mentioning a few coins as well. We've also got a post from Cointelegraph on it. And finally, we've got a De-SCi narrative being tracked by CoinGecko with Origin Trail at the very top. So this is a great follow-up for anybody who says, what's going on with Origin Trail? Are we interested in Origin Trail now? Well, I'm here to tell you, they are the leading protocol in the De-SCi narrative right now. So if that tells you something, then, you can go from there. But then when I was talking to Dominic about this before the stream, he brought up something to me and shared some links with me. So I wanted to hand it over to him to tell us, what do you know about this possibly emerging new narrative and how it works? It's kind of weird to be talking about these things before they have, their killer Dapp that changes the whole way we use everything. So what insights can you give us?
Yeah, I can share, I can kind of link to where people can, as you're showing now. So we also, we think it's a very interesting kind of upcoming trend in the space. I was just at DevCon last week, as I mentioned, and, I know there was, both Vitalik and CZ ended up at this really small De-SCi kind of side event because they're also very interested in it. So we have, under the same foundation, we're incubated by the On-Chain Foundation, and there's an on-chain research team. That's the link you see on that's being shared at the moment. They just do pure research for the industry, and they've, it's run by Mikhail right there. You see it. And so they've put out a lot of articles on this. They're very excited about this, this kind of vertical and what that could mean for Web3 and for decentralized science. So if you're interested, I would just recommend checking out this link, onchain.org/ you can go to their magazine and just click on the De-SCi in terms of categories. And they have all kinds of information that will help you learn a much more than I could probably tell you at the moment.
And I'm kind of in the same boat as you right now, Dominic, because I haven't studied this a lot yet. But my guess here, guys, is it's going to have something to do with staking to fund research. That the investment that you place in the tech, be it in a token connected to the tech or by depositing other tokens that are otherwise yield bearing into a protocol, you're helping to fund that project and then receiving some kind of compensation for your efforts. Now, how all of that actually looks and how that directly connects to the functional science that's going on, that remains to be seen here. You guys have heard me say multiple times that while I'm generally bullish on AI tokens when they're hot, I don't see blockchain as adding a lot to AI in terms of moving the tech forward. Like, it seems like the most advanced AI projects are not blockchain connected AI projects. So that would be the one side. But then when it comes to the world of on-chain value exchange and on-chain asset creation and custody, blockchain, or I should say digital asset creation and custody, blockchain is the overwhelming standard and is taking the world by storm. So you've got, two different things there. Which one of those De-SCi is going to fall into? I don't know yet. And that's what I kind of want to figure out as we go forward. Do you, Dominic, have any recommendations yourself, and I know maybe I'm inching into an area that you don't want to talk about too much, because I know your main area of focus is Lisk, and I completely respect that. But of this list that we see here, do you know of any standouts in the space that we should be watching, or are you still kind of waiting for one that strikes your interest?
Yeah, I'm not super up on the De-SCi coins thing, but I do think, I mean, in terms of what you were saying though, I think, again, like Web3 has shown that, like, as a funding model, it's very successful, right? Whether it's meme coins or ICOs. And I think, you see that with research traditionally, right? There's, researchers always have to kind of get grants from universities or generous donors to conduct the research. And I think, one of the big things is that it could unlock that and kind of this decentral funding mechanism, as you were talking about. And so, like, there is a natural fit there. And I agree totally with what you were talking about with AI. So I do think there's a lot of promise there. But yeah, as with anything, a little TBD. I'm sure there'll be a lot of hype around it in the coming years, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Absolutely. Well, it's something we're going to be exploring in our Bull Run course that's part of our Moralis Pro community experience. I think we're going to cover something on Lisk this week, but next week, potentially bouncing over to De-SCi. I may change my mind on that. Reach out to me if you know about a project in De-SCi that needs to be on our radar, and tell me why. Tell me why it's awesome. Tell me why we should check it out. Tell me what we can do with the current tech, because that's always important as well. And I love talking about this, guys, because I know that a lot of these streams, we talk a lot about meme coins. We talk about how can we make money in this industry today, because the bottom line is, when tomorrow comes and Bitcoin and Ethereum have gone to heights beyond our imagination, and this tech is going mainstream and absorbing exchange marketplaces worldwide. We haven't really seen this yet. When we start to see that, we want to have capital in order to exercise then. And so we're going to gravitate towards whatever is hot right now, be it meme coins, DeFi, or what have you. And De-SCi may very well be an area that deserves our attention. Let's find out together. Now, I do see a couple of questions in the chat here I want to snag while we still have about 5 minutes left here. The first one is, I'm just going to read it as it is. It's a great question. I already got all of my Lisk or tokens on Lisk mainnet. That means they already use the bridge, or maybe they bought them on a central exchange and moved them over. Are there any advantages to keeping some on Ethereum though?
At the moment, not. Again, like, we're very open to the community finding ways for that to happen, right? Like, whether it's integrating in kind of like a DeFi dApp that's only on Ethereum mainnet, or something completely different like Arbitrum. Even you could bridge it over there. But for the moment, again, like, we're focused on providing the majority of liquidity and use cases for the LSK token on the L2. So I think for the moment you're good. PG.
Now, is it a two-way bridge? If I move my assets over to Lisk L2 and I want to move them back to the Ethereum main, I can do that whenever I want?
You can do that whenever you want in a matter of seconds. We use a cross, which is, again, a quote unquote fast bridge. So there's no delay, minimal cost. In seconds, you're back on Ethereum. Or
beautiful. All right, let's see here. Now, just taking a look at what other questions we have here to see if somebody's asking about WorldCoin. As I understand it, WorldCoin was in the graphic because they're also part of the Superchain. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the WorldCoin team launched their own chain called WorldChain, and that's kind of meant to, it's meant to focus on their kind of identity solution that they built, and kind of have applications built using that. So that's kind of, that's the extent of it. We just think, again, I don't have a strong opinion either way on WorldCoin, but I think the team that's behind them, obviously with Sam and others, is very strong, and they created this unique kind of identity solution. I know it can be kind of controversial at times, but yeah, they're also part of the OP Superchain.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you there, Dominic. I actually personally know a couple of people. One of the researchers I first worked with in this industry is a developer over there. So, personally, I hope they do well. on a personal standpoint. But I'm not hugely involved with what they're doing. You know, I don't have a iScan booth near where I live. I have to go to Chicago or something. And I just haven't made a point to do that. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But interesting to see what they're building. And you know, I think it's a good time in our industry to understand that there is strength in unity, and that what we are building as an industry in terms of a 3-point accounting system for the world that can replace all you know, public ledgers that are currently privately controlled is really the goal. And that's something where there's so much room for success that I'd love to see it for just all sorts of different projects, Lisk, WorldCoin, and dozens of others. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah. And just one last, I mean, so again, like, I mean, from the interoperability standpoint, it means that, like, again, if you build an app on Lisk, you could tap into the identification technology system that they have on WorldChain if you wanted to. It's not a requirement. But to your point, like, I think I totally agree with that, right? I think we've gotten a little spoiled with how good our apps on our phone have become, and we've forgotten, like, how long it took them to get that good, but also, like, that it's a process in terms of the adoption of the technology, right? Like, if you think about like, again, if we're in like the late 1990s, early 2000s, like, social media is still a long way away. You know, Facebook launched in 2004. In 2012, 8 years later, when they went public, people were still skeptical that they had a business model, right? If you look at Twitter, when they launched in 2006, 3 years later in 2009, people, like, you know, celebrities signing up, super awkward. It's not what it was today, right? So this stuff takes time, but I totally agree that we're building this kind of alternative economic system, like the railways for this alternative economic system. And we believe that, like with social media, like how social media, like challenging traditional media, really first happened in regions in the world where there was a lot of, you know, censorship, and they needed it as like a lifeline. We see the same thing happening with Web3. So in the places where they need access to dollars, where they need access to new forms of being able to transmit currencies and interact, that's where you're going to see the most adoption. But as we continue to build, you know, it'll just be, as we've seen now in the last few years, or even the last 1 or 2 years, where social media has just become the dominant news source, right? And like, you will be ready, you know, in a few years for that to be the same with the economic system. If, you know, powers that be kind of mess things up or lose trust, and people will just be able to jump over. So yeah, we think we're building that collectively, as you said, and there's space for everybody. So yeah, thank you for having us.
I think we've found our last question here. So we've got a lot of meme coin fans in our community who love to trade meme coins. And the question is, can I make a meme coin on Lisk? I think is what they're asking. Can I mint a meme coin on Lisk, and how would I go about that?
Come. Sure. I mean, you can make a meme coin on Lisk as easily as anywhere else on layer 2s. You can reach out to us. We can even have our DevRel team run in, you know, chat with you about how to do it. You can check out our docs if you're curious. But yeah, I mean, we're a fan of memes. I mean, it's not like our main focus, but like we're talking about now, like, if technology takes a while to adopt, like, a lot of the first use cases are either in places where it's really needed, or kind of for fun use cases, like with GIFs and memes online. And we think meme coins are an extension of that. So we're all for it, kind of tokenizing that culture. And please come build meme coins or anything else on us. We'd be happy to have you.
Beautiful. All right, Dominic. Well, us at the Moralis Pro community, we're going to be taking a closer look at Lisk, checking out some of the dApps, seeing what opportunities we can make for ourselves in the new space. And we're very excited to follow you guys throughout this cycle. Dominic, is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up today?
No, I think I've covered the most things. You know, again, just keep an eye out on the interoperability that's coming. Take a look at, you know, the collective teams that are starting to build as part of the Superchain, as layer 2s on top of Ethereum. Don't let all the noise around everything else drown out that and what's actually being built there. Yeah, come hang out, come join us on social media, come join us on Discord. We're very accessible as a team. So if you have more questions, you know, even I try to get back to most questions that get asked to me. So happy to speak and continue the conversation.
Perfect. Well, guys, in just a little bit, we're going to head on over to the Moralis Pro server and have a discussion in the lounge chat. You're welcome to join us, microphone on or off. And usually we have more DeFi, meme coin, and really anything crypto discussion over there. It tends to be a very, very nice time. If you're not already a member, click that link below and check out what we're doing, or reach out to our support team at support@moralis.com for an option for a trial. Ask them and they can set you up with that. And special thank you to Lisk and Dominic for joining us today. We'll be sure to reach out to you guys again after some time has gone by, and perhaps have you on the show here again so we can hear more about what's happening. And as we all enjoy this excellent bull run, we'll see all of you guys in the next video.